Hello! Welcome to a react video for Garfield. Frick, I f***ed up. Hello, my name is Kimani. Welcome back to another react video. Today we're watching Garfield, the Dark Ride by Defunctland. She Garth on my field till I meow. Let's get started. Oh my god! He's so terrifying! Meow, meow. This intro is crazy.
In the mid-19th century, in the northeastern region of the United States, there was a new pastime that people could not get enough of.
What?
Picnics.
Aww.
While picnics have been a French pastime for over a century, Americans did not begin to indulge in the practice until the early 1800s. And
That's
then
so cute.
it was almost exclusively for the upper class.
I love
By the
picnics.
mid-19th century, though, people of all means were packing a basket, finding a picturesque location, and sitting on a blanket to enjoy a meal. Maybe somebody would bring a guitar and play some tunes. Maybe some couples would sneak off for some alone time.
Ooh.
Maybe some guy in a boat would row by to watch. Everyone loves a picnic. And for those living near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, one of the most popular picnic locations was Kenny's Grove, a beautiful section of a farm owned by a man named Anthony Kenny. Located southeast of Pittsburgh in the Mifflin Township, Kenny's
Never trust a man with two first names.
Grove was a popular picnic location with a beautiful view of the Monongahela River Valley. The area would become so popular in the latter half of the 19th century that in 1898, the Monongahela Street Railways Company sought to create a picnic park at the end of their Mifflin streetcar line.
Oh,
the
that's
company
smart.
leased land from the Kenny family and renamed the picnic area to Kennywood Park.
Kennywood
This type
Park.
of trolley park was common throughout the United States, and they were typically created to increase railway profits, especially on the weekends. As with many trolley parks, Kennywood Park would not remain a picnic park forever. In 1890,
That's so crazy that like every single person in these pictures are dressed in like their Sunday best. Like people really dressed up to go out back in these days.
1998, just a year after leasing the land, Monongahela added a dance pavilion, the casino building restaurant, and Kennywood's first ride, a carousel. The following year,
Oh my god, they it went from a wholesome picnic park to now an entertainment system and a casino? It always goes back to gambling, man.
a bandstand was constructed, and the year after that, in 1901, Kennywood built another new ride, named the Old Mill. The Old Mill was not a unique ride to Kennywood, but rather an entire category of amusement park ride. Old Mills are slow-moving boat rides, with no steep inclines or declines. The water in many of these rides are moved, as the name suggests, by a mill. Old Mills were best known for their significant indoor stretches that were most often in pitch-black darkness. This led many
this is when okay, I know about this. It's like where people go, like couples go, and you just are in the dark in a boat together, and you like kiss each other. You go mwah, 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 mwah. It's so
couples to take advantage of the dark portions for romance-related activity, leading to the Old Mill getting its more recognizable name, the Tunnel of Love. These seemed to sprout up all over the place in the late 19th and early 20th century, in World's Fairs, state fairs, trolley parks, and amusement parks, and their reputation soon became a marketing ploy, with more and more Old Mills receiving branding of a romantic or sexual nature.
Whoa!
The Old Mill at Kennywood was one of the first Old
me.
Mill rides, and although it was never branded specifically as a Tunnel of Love, local couples found that it worked just the same. Kennywood's Old Mill would receive several themes and overlays during its first few years of operation. It was first themed to the Fairyland floats, then to the canals of Venice, and later to the Panama Canal, which at the time was an extremely topical theme as the actual Panama Canal had just debuted. After the Panama Canal theme, the Old Mill became the Rapids Gorge, and then the Fairyland floats again,
before
returning to its classic.
How many times are we gonna change the freaking name? What the heck? These people are like, they saw a headline, or like, we gotta change the name, guys. We can't keep it the same name. It actually is probably pretty smart marketing. But it's also crazy that you could that's like me changing my name from Kaimani Clowny to Kaimani the Clown to like Kaimani the Bozo, back to Kaimani the Clown, to, I don't know, Kaimani the Jester. I don't know, it's just like a lot of name changes.
Name, the Old Mill. In 1922, the ride underwent a refurbishment and received a new facade to appear more like a New England mill, and had its ride system overhauled and enlarged. Arguably the biggest change to the Old Mill in its early years would come after the ride caught on fire and burned to the ground.
What?
Being rebuilt for the 1926 season and
How does a water ride catch on fire and burn to the ground? There's literally water. Okay.
receiving new theming with comic supplement characters, including Happy Hooligan, the Katzenjammer Kids, and Jiggs and Maggie. In 1936, the Old Mill was redecorated again with 8 new theatrically lit pictures. Another major refurbishment to the ride occurred in 1940. During this season, the Old Mill received a renovation with new animations. The refurbishment featured 7 well-known characters from comic strips and cartoons, including Blondie, Popeye, the Lone Ranger, the Little King.
Wait, but like, that's a huge it looks like it's a straight-up theme park now. Also, these cartoon characters are so cute. I wish people should bring these cartoons back. They're so adorable, and their comics are so cute and simple.
Tarzan, Gulliver, and Little Henry. In 1957, the Old Mill was themed to a trip around the world. The comic characters were replaced with scenes of Hawaii, a kangaroo in Australia, a tiger in Asia, an elephant in Africa, and even Santa Claus in the North Pole.
Isn't that literally just It's a Small World? Oh my god, who did it first? Did Disney do it first, or did they do it first? Holy... Oh my god.
The loading area was also given an animatronic band of monkeys that would play music for guests in the queue, which was apparently auctioned off just 1 month before I started writing this video.
No way!
Although it sold for $2,300, which is more than I've ever spent on an animatronic monkey band.
Wow.
For the 1974 season, the Old Mill would receive its
Old Navy font?
Most significant thematic overhaul to date, becoming Hard-Headed Harold's horrendously humorous haunted hideaway. This retheme sent
Hard-Headed Harold's horrendously horror haunted hideaway? What the frick? That is a long name.
riders through an Old West ghost town with comical and frightening scenes of skeletons placed throughout the ride. Some of these figures were animated, and sound effects were added to a few sections.
So spooky.
This is the first version of the attraction that has been well documented, and it showcases the creative placement of the show scenes throughout the ride track. The Old Mill's middle section consists of 3 circles.
Is that a Mickey
In the
Mouse?
center of these, outdoor show scenes were constructed, with parts of the tunnel being removed and replaced with fencing so guests could look outside.
Whoa.
There are also 4 show buildings where dark ride scenes have been placed. Despite the creative theming of Hard-Headed Harold's horrendously humorous haunted hideaway, the Old Mill continued to be known for one thing.
Ooh.
Kennywood's director of community and government relations put it best.
Second base when you're 14.
Explaining, quote, "It didn't matter what the theme was. Anyone who rode that ride in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they were not on that ride to look at the scenes."
Ooh.
It's a place for cuddling and to sort of make out canoodle. You're a little bit nervous about getting on the Old Mill with the girl the first time because you might end up getting slapped, but you also might end up getting, you know, a snuggle.
In 1984, the
Ooh,
Pittsburgh Post-Gazette did a feature on the ride's reputation of romance. When interviewed, 15-year-old Missy Stash said, quote, "Everyone goes in there and really goes at it. You should see. Some of the boats come out and there's nobody in them."
Oh my
61-year-old
God.
Ellen Ammon, recalling her Old Mill trips from the 1930s, remembered that the boys would bring string onto the ride. In the dark portions, they would brush the string along the necks of girls to convince them that there were spiders and water snakes in the tunnels,
Oh, that's
in an effort to hold them
mean.
close through their terror. Another common occurrence was seeing couples buttoning up their shirts while exiting the attraction.
Wait, why would they be buttoning up? Did they forget to button up their shirts before they left this morning to go to the theme park? Huh.
An uptick in romantic activity in the Old Mill was met with an increase in supervision from the park. Kennywood employees would be stationed at various points throughout the ride, armed with a flashlight and a disapproving stare. They would rarely intervene if the activity was nothing more than a kiss.
Oh, that's messed up. They had someone in there with a flashlight, like, I see you. What if you like that? Oh, that's even more exciting. I can't believe they hired professional cucks. No way.
At one point in the 1960s, Kennywood employees were given a plastic bat and were instructed that if they saw the naked buttocks of any rider, they were to smack them with the bat. This was...
Wait, how do I get that job? That job sounds awesome. Imagine getting paid, like, what did I get paid? 25 cents an hour? Just to smack people in the butt? Wait, people were actually just fully doing it in this ride? That's crazy.
Very effective, and almost always prompted the embarrassed couples to quickly redress themselves for the remainder of the journey. This solution was actually quite popular in Old Mills, as this photo from a different tunnel of love proves. Kennywood would later install cameras and a PA system so that employees could tell riders to stop their behavior without having to assault them in the dark. Hard-headed Harold horrendously...
Yeah, that's a good idea. Not assaulting the riders. That is crazy. Also, cameras, weirdo. That's like almost as worse. You know, like kids are gonna get at it in there. So why are you gonna look at them?
Haunted hideaway.
Like ideally, or I guess it's safety, right? They're doing it for safety, but like, what's wrong with it? I don't know. Let the kids have their fun.
Understandably dropped the alliterative name in 1992, reverting back to the old mill but keeping the rest of the theme.
Oh
As
my
the old
God,
mill entered the 2000s,
stick to a freaking theme. Every new person that came into corporate for this theme park was like, guys, I got an idea. It was like, oh, what is it, Jim? You want to rename the old mill? Guess what? We've been doing that for the last 60 years.
Officially celebrating its 100th birthday, Kennywood was weighing the pros and cons of the ride. Due to its age and design, the attraction required a lot of maintenance and took up a significant amount of land at the park.
Wow.
Kennywood is well known for constantly building new attractions and creating new experiences to push locals to come back each season. So it was not out of the question to tear down the old mill and replace it with something more modern and thrilling. However, the management at Kennywood also cares deeply for the history of its park, and few, if any, wanted to see the park's oldest attraction torn down. So 100 years after its opening and 30 years after its last major refurbishment, a refresh of the old mill was on everyone's minds. Kennywood wanted to find a way to keep the historic ride in the park, but update it to appeal to modern audiences. And the answer to this would come in the form of a powerful cat.
A cat?
Named Garfield. Garfield is a comic strip written by cartoonist Jim Davis that debuted in 1976. The eponymous orange tabby cat needs no introduction. The general public is well aware of his love of lasagna, hatred of Mondays, and his trademark laziness. Garfield, along with his dorky owner John, John's naive dog Odie, and a cast of other recurring characters, quickly found their ways into the comic sections of newspapers across the country. By 1982, the strip was appearing in over 1,000 newspapers. Over the next 2 decades, as the comic and character rose in popularity, Garfield would spawn an unprecedented amount of merchandise and media, including toys, books, video games, TV specials, and much more. Despite
This is so, like, not pertaining to this story, but the other day for Christmas, one of my friends really loves Garfield, and I found a Chinese Garfield, and I gifted it to my friend. A Chinese Garfield. Oh. It had like the Lunar New Year envelope and everything. Like, Garfield merchandise goes crazy.
Garfield being a household name and his face being on everything from tea kettles to lava lamps, he was noticeably absent in amusement parks. It seemed that every major park chain had a classic cartoon character as a mascot. Disney had Mickey Mouse and Friends. Universal had Woody Woodpecker. Cedar Fair had the Peanuts Gang. And Six Flags had the Looney Tunes. Garfield's omission from the medium was not lost on his creator.
Okay, I literally only ever knew about the Disney Mickey Mouse, obviously. I didn't know all those other theme parks actually had, like, cartoon characters.
1988, when asked if Garfield would enter the theme park business, Davis said, quote, "I wouldn't touch it. Never."
What?
And that's the history of Garfield and theme parks. Wait, 8 years later, he changed his mind. Wonder why.
Money, money, money. I wonder how much they... 120 million park?
In 1996, plans were announced for a 535-acre theme park to be located in Davis's home state of Indiana, near Indianapolis in Hendricks County. The project was named the Heartland Festival Entertainment Complex, and at the heart of the park would be Garfield's universe, a land dedicated to the character.
That is so funny because there is a new Universal park that opened last year called Epic Universe. Coincidence? I think not.
This would include a character carousel, Arbuckle's picnic coaster, a ride called Garfield's Extreme Adventure, an Odie tongue slide, Irma's Diner, and Mama Leone's restaurant, which would serve, of course, lasagna. The park was planned to open in 1997 and was a joint effort between a Michigan development company and Davis's company, Paws Inc. The cost of the project was estimated to be $120 million. By all accounts, Davis was significantly involved in the park's design, even going so far as to have a special Garfield theme park planning room and even conceptualizing the more mundane aspects of the project, such as the garbage cans and restrooms.
No, Shaw,
on top of the design
you can pee in Garfield's mouth? Surely that's like not a good idea though, right?
Contractors, Davis reached out to other amusement park operators to consult on the project during its early stages. This was when Davis first reached out to the Kennywood Entertainment Company, which owned 5 small parks in and around Pennsylvania, including Kennywood in West Mifflin.
Okay, the one thing I'm thinking of is $120 million. That's a lot of money. And I guess this is also in the 90s. But I don't know if that's enough money to build an entire themed theme park surrounding one cartoon character. Like that, I feel like that would be really hard to find investments and people willing to fund that, and like the projected sales becoming like a big, huge thing. Because even like Disney World, yes, is like Mickey Mouse, but like they also have all the Disney movies. You know what I mean? And like all the different areas. And that's why Disney's like super big. Like they went animation first and then they like did theme park second. Anyway.
A year after the announcement, the opening date was pushed back to 1998. Despite significant utilities and groundwork being completed, the project struggled to find the remainder of its funding. The following year, the park...
I'm so smart! I'm so smart! Didn't I call it? I called it.
Rebranded to Garfield's Adventure America and scaled back on its plans, opting to construct and debut the Garfield area first, with the opening now planned for 1999. By this point, a significant number of Hendricks County residents opposed the project, even forming a group called Citizens Opposing Amusement Park, or COPE. The theme park was pushed back.
Yeah, they are coping, honestly. Like, what I hate when people, you know what? I watched a video before. France did this too. They tried to open like a Disney World in France or something, and French people were like, "No, this is terrible," and they literally threw riots because they did not want a theme park being opened in their like vicinity. Which to me, I don't really get it. I'm like, isn't that good for your economy, and it like stimulates growth and it employs people and it gives a lot of like tourism and stuff, and it like, I don't know, increases your property value. I don't know, sometimes people just don't really like change or don't really want anything new to happen.
Another year with a projected opening of 2000. In December of 1999, Kennywood officials attended the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions Convention and Trade Show.
Oh my god, I want to go to that! That sounds awesome!
They learned that Garfield was available to license. It seemed that while Garfield's Adventure America was in a state of limbo, Davis was looking to integrate the character elsewhere, at least temporarily, and Kennywood Entertainment was reportedly one of his top choices, specifically the historic Kennywood Park as well as lake compounds in Connecticut. Kim Campbell, a spokesperson for Paws Inc., explained, quote, "Jim liked the long histories of both parks, the family-friendly atmosphere, and the fact that they were picnic areas. Jim said the parks were a perfect fit for Garfield, who never met a picnic he didn't like. You didn't think that picnic stuff was gonna come back, did you?" An agreement was made between Kennywood and Paws Inc. for a 1-year licensing deal to have Garfield and Odie become the mascots of both Kennywood and Lake Compounds. This is despite the fact that Kennywood and Lake Compounds already had mascots. Kennywood had Kenny the kangaroo, and Lake Compounds had Kyle the crocodile.
Yeah, get those out. Those are like the most creepy. Like, did he try to find a creepy picture? Both of those outfits are terrifying.
Both parks assured fans that Garfield and Odie would stand alongside the legacy characters and would not be replacing them. This integration in the northeastern parks seemed to conflict with the appeal of Garfield's Adventure America in Indiana. However, it was revealed that the developers of the Indiana park only had the exclusive rights to the character within a 150-mile radius, and that Jim Davis and Paws Inc. had never financially invested in the park. The developers assured the public and their investors that Garfield's integration at Kennywood and Lake compounds would not detract from the appeal of Garfield's Adventure America. But at this point, many were convinced that the park would never be built. Meanwhile, at the Kennywood parks, Garfield and Odie were fitting right in, I'm
gonna guess those parks never got built. That's my guess, because if they did, I'm going to them. That would be so sick to go to the Garfield park.
Photos with guests, selling merchandise, and appearing in advertisements. The integration was successful enough that Kennywood and Paws Inc. extended their agreement, further cementing Garfield's presence in the parks. Kennywood's Kittyland would receive more Garfield theming, and in 2002, the first Garfield ride opened at Kennywood, named Garfield's Pounce Bounce. A kitty bounce tower made to look like a block of cheese, covered in mice, and adorned with a Garfield statue. As Garfield continued to increase his presence at Kennywood, the park in Indiana was finally canceled. The developer had been sued by one of its contractors for lack of payment, and not long after this, it was revealed that the park owed $166,000 in back taxes. The park was soon foreclosed on, and the development company filed for bankruptcy. By 2003, the project was dead, and the county was redistricting the land where the park would have sat. Despite the failure of the park.
That is so unfortunate. It did seem like they did not have enough funding. Like I said earlier, it just didn't seem like they had enough funding, and they were basing it all off of one cartoon character. Like, investors are not going to invest in that. But, you know, good job for trying, honestly, because it would be so fun to, like, have more niche type of amusement parks. But, you know, that's just not what's going to bring in the money, I guess.
Davis was still passionate about Garfield's presence in theme parks, and since he and his company already had a successful relationship with Kennywood, it only made sense to go all in on the Pennsylvania park. It was time for Garfield to get his own dark ride.
Here we go.
It was at this point that the history of the Old Mill and the history of Garfield collided. Davis and Paws Inc. wanted a Garfield dark ride, and Kennywood wanted to retheme the Old Mill.
Why a dark ride, though? Oh, because I guess they had a light ride where it was outside, but they wanted like a fully renovated themed ride. I see.
Timing was perfect, and even better, Kennywood already had a designer in mind. Larry Kirshner, the owner of the haunted house design.
What is this picture? Larry Kirshner, he will come for you.
Firm Halloween Productions had recently installed an attraction at Kennywood, telling park management that if there ever came an opportunity to design a dark ride, Kirshner and Halloween Productions wanted in. Kirshner recalled wanting to design a dark ride so bad that he would almost do it for free.
Wait, what the heck? Why are they getting... Wait. Why are they getting someone who is really good at horror and scary dark rides to make a Garfield dark ride? From Halloween Productions? Wait a second. Is this gonna be scary?
The Garfield Old Mill retheme was discussed. Kennywood reached out to Kirshner, who happily accepted the job. Kirshner's plans for the attraction included animatronics and 3D effects, and his background in haunted houses would lead him to pitch a Garfield ride with horror and comedy aspects, not dissimilar to the Old Mill's Hard-Headed Harold theming. However, Kirshner's plans were too ambitious. He recalled, quote, "We wanted to make it look like a billboard smashes open and there's a Frankenstein food character, and then we squirt them all with water. I wanted to do other CGI effects so it wasn't so static and so the characters were interacting with them." Obviously, big effects like this were difficult to achieve in the retheme's limited budget, but the team ran into another issue entirely.
Well, my issue is Garfield's not meant to be scary. Garfield's just meant to be like a lazy cat who hangs out with his owner and Otis, and they all hang out and they go on like little adventures. There's not supposed to be anything scary about it. What are they doing to him?
Kennywood officials explained to Kirshner and Halloween Productions that, quote, "We can't make it too great because too many people would want to ride it. It has a pretty limited capacity since it's a boat ride." Pete McEnany, the general manager of Kennywood Entertainment, remembered, quote, "One of the things we had to do was not make it too spectacular because it doesn't have a high capacity. So with a small budget and an explicit directive to make the ride no better than good, the team marched forward." Kirshner imagined guests riding through the Old Mill as though they were riding through a Garfield book. The premise for the ride was that Garfield was having a nightmare, which would give the team an excuse to incorporate horror elements and retain some of the dark portions. One point of contention in the ride's history was the involvement of Jim Davis and Paws Inc. While Davis certainly wanted the ride to be built and approved it, there was a dispute as to how involved he was in the creative process. McEnany recalled that Davis wrote the script for the ride and drew the concept art, but Kirshner recalled, quote, "We did 20 or 30 drawings. He didn't do anything. I never talked to Jim Davis. The biggest thing was he or someone gave us some Garfield books, and then we had to figure out which story we wanted to tell." Despite the obstacles, Kirshner and Halloween Productions were able to pull off a substantial retheme to the old mill, resulting in the most elaborate overlay in the ride's 103-year-old history. How this version would be received by the public, though, was still uncertain.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, my theory is everyone's gonna love it. Anyway, there we go. Come on.
On May 1st, 2004, Kennywood opened for the season
funny.
with a brand new attraction, Garfield's Nightmare. The retheme to the old mill was dedicated...
I love how mascots are just socially acceptable furries. If you think about it, it's someone and they get paid for it too. That's so crazy to me.
With a small ceremony, at which Garfield and Odie took their first ride. Kenny the Kangaroo was also in attendance, although he could not fit into the boat with the other characters.
No, Kenny! No, someone get him on the...
Guests entered the attraction under the large signage, twisting around an outdoor queue with the familiar old mill show building intact. With a small adjustment, in the window of the mill house, a frightened Garfield could be seen inside as the shutters opened and closed.
Oh my gosh,
While waiting in line,
Garfield.
riders viewed TV screens that explained the history of the ride and featured clips of Garfield. As guests entered the loading area, they were surprisingly handed 3D glasses to wear on the attraction.
What?
After riders loaded into their boat, they would take a left turn,
It's a
passing a
3D
guard
ride?
station revealing that the ride was covered in cameras. Reportedly, this was intentionally put in plain sight as another deterrent for romantic activity. As guests climbed a short lift hill, they heard a mysterious booming voice.
"This is the most frightening adventure you will ever be on. Unless you have cheese. I like cheese. So give me some cheese and
enjoy your ride."
After a right turn, guests went down a passageway covered in glowing advertisements for PepsiCo products, which was unsurprisingly Kennywood's food and drink vendor. This was also the first of many blacklight scenes, and the walls were splattered with fluorescent material, which was definitely added by Halloween Productions during the refurbishment and was not the result of 103 years of bad aim. This is also where the 3D glasses came into play, rather than being a stereoscopic 3D effect.
Wait, what do they mean by bad aim? Hold on. Wait. I don't think I got that joke, and I'm scared to understand it.
Which two images are made into one to simulate depth. Garfield's Nightmare used chroma depth, which diffracts colors through a holographic film. This results in certain colors popping into the foreground while others are pushed into the background. The warm colors, red, orange, and yellow, are the ones pulled forward, while blue, indigo, and violet are pushed back. This effect works best with bright primary and secondary colors, which inadvertently gave the ride a distinct color scheme. The chroma depth effect is commonly used in haunted houses, and Kirshner and his team are industry leaders in the style. A benefit of the style is that unlike stereoscopic 3D, riders could view the ride without glasses, and would not have the ghosting effect seen when watching a polarized or anaglyph 3D setup without glasses. A nice, possible coincidence was that Garfield was famously orange, so the character would always pop to the foreground, while the background and other characters in the ride would be painted with blue or green colors. If you'd like to try this out for yourself, you can find cheap chroma depth glasses online and watch a POV of the ride with the brightness turned all the way up. It's just like the real thing.
No way!
After the product placement tunnel, riders encounter their first Garfield strip, which...
Wait, why wouldn't I just want to go on the ride? Oh no, is the ride dead? No! Oh man, why would I have to watch the video and buy the... Oh jeez, man.
Depicts Garfield falling asleep after a big meal, thus beginning his nightmare. The strips appearing in the ride were previously released Garfield strips and not created specifically for the attraction. After this, guests enter the first scene, in which Garfield's messy house begins to come alive, with the door swinging open and shut.
So
Garfield's voice plays overhead, repeating,
I never met an ice cream truck I didn't like.
What?
Another strip depicted Garfield depressed that he couldn't catch the ice cream truck. In the next scene, the ice cream truck finally appears, but in a twist, the truck, driven by ice cream cones, is chasing after Garfield.
Oh my god!
Another strip depicted Garfield scaring the mailman. a running gag in the comics. The next scene shows the mailman smiling as an angry dog opens and closes its jaws.
Oh my
the next
God.
strip features another running gag from the comics in which Garfield torments spiders. Predictably, the next scene is of a large spider tormenting Garfield.
A big
This
spider.
pattern continues with another running gag, Garfield eating a fish in a fishbowl, followed by a scene of a fish eating Garfield.
Oh
The
my
most terrifying-
God, that is so cool. This ride so far is just so creative and so cool. Like, for not having worked with the creator of Garfield and just having to pick out random books and random scenes, they truly like wrote such a funny story, and this fish animatronic is so funny.
Part of the ride thus far is arguably this chair. While not explicitly referenced in the ride, another running gag from the comic strip is Garfield using John's chair as a scratching post. And it appears that this chair, while not getting direct revenge on Garfield, is having a great time watching. The next scene shows
He's a
Garfield's
cock.
vet Liz holding a giant needle, with Garfield tied up by a rope,
Oh my
held by an
God.
Igor-type character. The needle would blow a puff of air onto riders. Another strip depicts Garfield attacking the pizza delivery man, and the next scene
I
shows
thought they said they had to make this ride kind of suck. This ride is awesome. I would 100% queue for this ride. Holy crap.
the pizza delivery man and evil pizza boxes attacking Garfield. The next strip and scene is a break from form. The strip depicts Garfield mentioning that he's going to the kitchen, with a depressed-looking John saying nothing. The next scene is one of the most difficult to decipher. On the right side of the boat, the appliances in the kitchen have come to life in menacing fashion, while boxes of lasagna have formed a kick line on the table. On the left side of the boat, a terrified Garfield is surrounded by an evil-looking John and a monstrous Odie, who appears to have torn off his long tongue and wrapped it around his body like a coat. There is also a zombie hot dog monster strapped to a table wearing sunglasses.
What?
The final strip and scene shows John asking Garfield to catch mice, which Garfield refuses to do. In the comic strip, Garfield will eat just about anything besides mice. Despite this, in Garfield's nightmare, the mice still want revenge on him, cooking up a cat stew.
What?
As the ride nears its end, the characters that were tormenting Garfield moments ago are now lined up, smiling as the boat passes.
Oh, that's
Garfield's
so
voice instructs guests that a
creepy.
photo op is coming up.
Oh yeah, got a photo opportunity coming up. Doesn't get any better than that.
The mouse from the beginning of the ride instructs guests to smile as a large camera is clearly placed so the guests may pose for the picture.
Oh my God.
As guests reach the end of the ride, a final strip appears on the wall. Garfield says, quote, "What a great ride. It was kind of scary, but it's over now," while the creatures from the ride follow close behind. This appears to be the only Garfield strip created specifically for the attraction.
Wow. That was good. I really liked that ride. Was awesome. I really liked that ride. And it was like pretty scary. Like, I'm trying to imagine being, I don't know, 5 and going on that ride. I'd be like, oh my God. Oh my God.
Garfield's nightmare was drastically different than the old mill Kennywood regulars were used to, and any significant change would have its detractors. However, Garfield's nightmare almost immediately developed a cult of hatred among parkgoers, with many citing its cheap effects, product placement, and overall bizarre nature. It was too scary for many children, and too Garfield for many adults. For longtime Kennywood fans, it felt like a betrayal of the historic old mill. But in all fairness, they probably just weren't around for the 1920s version that featured Jiggs and Maggie, the Garfield and Odie of the 20s. As far as a Garfield ride goes, it successfully featured many classic characters and famous scenarios from the comics.
God forbid you go to an amusement park to go see cartoons. Okay, yeah, these guys are haters for real. I went on the Garfield ride and it was just too Garfield for me. Ugh. They should bring it back to the old mill, the boring snooze ride. Because I'm an adult. And that's what adults like. Get out of here.
And the original art that Kirshner and his team created for the ride looked like it was pulled straight out of a Garfield strip. Despite the low budget, the attraction featured solid gags and some terrifying imagery.
Yeah,
but
it was
who cares
really
what Kennywood
good.
regulars, Garfield fans, or even children think? The real demographic that matters is the one that gave the old mill its century-long reputation. Young couples. In a Pittsburgh Post-Gazette report before the ride's opening, Kennywood officials assured fans that, quote, "We haven't messed with what made the old mill, which the Gazette took to mean that, quote, "Couples will still be able to find a suitable spot along the way to, exchange pleasantries." This persistent mentioning in official media of the ride's reputation as a love
Imagine getting your freak on while there's like a Frankenstein hot dog looking at you. Also, the Frankenstein hot dog in the ride too.
sent me down a rabbit hole that I could not have anticipated. Full disclosure for anyone that is not aware, every amusement park ride you have ever been on or will ever go on has been the setting for some funny business. Whether it's at your local amusement park or at Walt Disney World, if you can be seated within arm's reach of another person, someone has found a way to do something on that ride. I talk about amusement park rides all the time, and I never mention this because it's never notable. It's just a given. However, in all of my research...
Is it a given? I didn't know that. That's so weird. I've never I've never sat on a ride and I was like, there's probably some people that jork the dog over here. I don't know how you would say this. There's someone over here that probably whacked the willy. I don't know.
I have never come across a ride in which major publications, journalists have reported consistently, constantly on a ride's reputation like the Old Mill at Kennywood. I found a newspaper article from 1934 talking about how the ride is a great spot for couples, and the 1984 article in which couples were interviewed about their romantic activity pushed me over the edge. Not what I meant.
Okay, so I get that he's saying that he's never heard of a ride that reports multiple times on couples getting it on or kissing or whatever in the ride, but hear me out. Every freaking movie has some sort of love scene in a carnival Ferris wheel. Hello? I've seen that everywhere. And movies, TV shows, books. I've seen that trope everywhere. And it's not that strange. This just happens to be their Ferris wheel ride.
After hearing mention that sometimes boats would pull into the station with no one inside, I knew that I had to go deeper. Dang it. Look, if you're just interested in the physical history of amusement park rides and you don't care about the culture attached to the Old Mill, I'd recommend skipping to this time code. For those remaining, there was a significant amount of documentation as to how Kennywood attempted to police young lovers on the ride, but little was known on how these riders were able to accomplish some of the feats that they were boasting about. Were these legends true or were they fiction? In the name of research, I tweeted the following. Have you or someone you know ever made out or made love in the Old Mill Dark Ride at Kennywood Amusement Park? If so, please email your story to imadelevein.theoldmill@defunctland.com.
This is an insane... Defunctland is... This man chose the weirdest hole to go down. He chose the highest hill to die on. This is insane. On Twitter.com of all things. Surely there's going to be so many people that are just going to lie.
Followed up this tweet clarifying that I didn't want details of the activity. I wanted to know where in the ride people jumped out. And either no one saw this reply or they didn't care, because I did receive many emails, and most of them contained graphic detailing of activities that took place in the Old Mill. To borrow a bit of Pittsburghese, yins are nasty. Of the 56 messages I received, only 3 were obviously fake, and the vast majority contained details far too specific to be made up.
Wait, really? Only 3 of them were fake? That's crazy. Sure, what? Okay, I mean, that's cool. Let's hear it.
Mentioning school trips or special events that I verified were accurate. I'm not going to share any of these and assert that they are 100% true.
Come on, Internet Historian would share it. Internet Historian would make a whole fanfic detailing the accounts and getting his staff to help him out and drawing it and, whatever. Come on, Defunctland. I believe you're better than this.
But here are a few of the more interesting submissions with redacted bits for anonymity and appropriateness. Feel free to pause and read at your own pace.
This in no way is related to lovemaking, although I guess some people are into it. When I was about 10 or so, my friend on the boat were into aerial dumps, which is exactly what
What?
No! Blanking from the highest area possible could. Trees were commonly used as standing off the lid of a toilet seat. Well, no parents were around, and sure enough, my friend stood up on the ride and screamed aerial dump and took a big wet one right into the water. I'm still disgusted by the This is the one I paused on. Okay, I'm not reading anymore.
In the end, the email submissions did provide a few interesting insights. First, smart couples would come in packs, try to space out their boat departures as best they could from other riders, and then run their hands on either side of the boat to slow their motion.
And then they would rub their hands on each other as a quadruple couple.
Thus extending the ride and their time in the dark. Second, there are at least 2 people who claim to know someone that was conceived on this ride.
Oh,
maybe it's you.
What?
Third, most surprising, the Garfield overlay did not deter many people from treating the old mill as the same tunnel of love previous generations had enjoyed. In fact, the majority of my emails were about acts of passion that took place in the neon-lit tunnels of Garfield's nightmare. Some people noted that the Garfield theming diminished the aura of romance, while others admitted that they believe it added to it.
Aww.
Some even purposefully sought it out. Maybe ironically, maybe not. As one emailer so eloquently put it, quote, Garfield knows all of our sins.
Oh my god.
Perhaps the greatest sin, though, was the lack of upkeep and proper maintenance that Garfield's nightmare experienced. Within just a few years, the screens in the queue were removed, and many of the effects in the ride stopped working. The audio cues were off or missing, and the video of the mouse at the beginning sometimes wouldn't play. The neon paint started to fade, diminishing any effect the 3D glasses had.
No.
The 3D glasses themselves would often not be handed to guests, and it seemed they were eventually phased out altogether, although they would reappear infrequently. When guests were given 3D glasses, the often rambunctious riders would make a game out of throwing them onto the ride, trying to land them in the mouth of the dog or hit certain objects. Oddly, the upkeep of the ride was so poor that the
To be fair, that the mouth of the dog definitely looks like some sort of target that you can aim at. Even me, as my big adult mature brain, I'm still like, I could throw something in that.
Whites of the eyes of the characters in the blown-up comic strips were either faded or removed, resulting in them appearing permanently blackened.
Oh my god, that's even creepier.
All of this somewhat added to the uneasy nature of the ride, but it really just showed the attraction's lack of upkeep. Other than this, the ride lived a quaint, quiet existence, with no major changes or updates.
Wow.
Year after year, Kennywood would open for the season, and Garfield's Nightmare would open with it. In 2007, a Nintendo DS platformer named Garfield's Nightmare was released. But besides the title, the game is in no way connected to the ride. In 2011, the Garfield comic strip featured Garfield, Odie, and John going to an amusement park named Kennywood, which appeared to be a parody of Kennywood.
What?
After 2008, Garfield and Odie were phased out as Kennywood mascots and stopped appearing in advertisements.
No!
Kenny the Kangaroo reclaimed his throne in West Mifflin and even got a sidekick. Does he look familiar? No. It's the sign.
What?
It's the Kennywood sign. You can meet the sign. Kennywood would eventually integrate Thomas the Tank Engine and the Pittsburgh Steelers into attractions at the park.
That is the absolute worst mascot I think I've ever seen. Also, what the heck? Is that a football game? A football team? Brand? Whatever?
And the new properties fit into Kennywood much more effortlessly than Garfield ever did. Despite Garfield and Odie no longer appearing in the park, Garfield's Nightmare continued to operate, year after year, with no end in sight. This was until 2019, when news broke that Paws Inc. was being acquired by Viacom, and the rights to Garfield would be utilized by Viacom subsidiary Nickelodeon. This also put Viacom in charge of the character's licensing.
Oh, yeah!
Viacom immediately began tightening the brand's image, and the company told Kennywood that if they wished to continue to operate Garfield's Nightmare, the licensing fee would be increased significantly. This pressured Kennywood into removing the Garfield's Nightmare theming from the old mill, and no one at the park put up much of a fight to save the ride. Garfield's Nightmare had operated for 16 seasons, and for many, that was 16 too many. This is not to say that the attraction had no fans.
16 seasons is so good. To me, that's a successful ride. People liked it.
In those 16 years of operation, an entire generation of Kennywood visitors had experienced the ride as their one and only version of the old mill. In March of 2020, Kennywood's YouTube account posted a video titled The History of the Old Mill at Kennywood. The video started as a Ken Burns-style theme park documentary in a similar vein to other YouTube channels that I'm completely blanking on. However, halfway through the video, it was revealed that this was not just a retrospective of the old mill, but it was also an announcement.
We're going to be bringing back the old mill as so many of you have requested and restoring the ride to the retro Western theme.
The news was celebrated by fans who cheered, "The nightmare is over." And the Pittsburgh City Paper's headline read,
"Oh my god, these people are so dramatic." Whatever. That's so silly. You take your stupid old boring mill back. Whatever.
I hope they serve lasagna in heaven. During the off-season, the ride was gutted and completely rethemed. Unfortunately, all of the props from Garfield's Nightmare with a direct tie to the Garfield brand were destroyed at the demand of Viacom in order to prevent them from being sold or ending up on the black market.
That would be so cool though if people found different ride stuff, like different parts of the Garfield ride. That would be such a cool collector's memorabilia.
To ensure compliance, Kennywood had to film employees completely destroying the Garfield props.
Wow.
The opening of the ride would be delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but when it debuted for guests in July of 2020, when Kennywood opened for a shortened summer season, it was met with positive reviews. The familiar Old West ghost town theme was welcomed back into the historic ride.
Sorry, I fell
Despite
asleep.
the massive overhaul, the new theming utilized...
I saw a skeleton with a vest on and I was like, wow, this is fun.
multiple props and effects from Garfield's Nightmare. The new Old Mill also had multiple tributes to Kennywood history, including references to previous Old Mill iterations. For instance, the appearance of a character named Harold, referencing Hard-Headed Harold's horrendously humorous haunted hideaway.
Oh my god!
The scenes also featured multiple orange tabby cats throughout the ride, and a tombstone in a graveyard read, G Nightmare. I hope there is lasagna.
Aww, they've paid homage to it.
The Old Mill at Kennywood is the world's oldest operating Old Mill attraction, and this is not by coincidence. Kennywood is a historic park whose employees and visitors care deeply for its history. While Garfield's Nightmare was not necessarily a beloved attraction, the retheme played an important part in extending the life of this historic ride. While some might remember Garfield's Nightmare for its neon paint and surreal visuals, like any Old Mill retheme, most Kennywood guests will remember the attraction for something else. While most of the emails I received detailed explicit and often disgusting acts of passion that took place on the Old Mill, my takeaway was not that the ride should be burned to the ground for the good of the general public. In fact, it was quite the opposite. The romantic activities that happened within the walls of the Old Mill, as humorous and crass as they could be, reminded me of something that I've always believed.
What?
Theme and amusement parks are special environments, where some of our strongest memories are formed, whether that's thrill, imagination, or even love. Hearing people of many different generations share how this one ride impacted them was surprisingly moving. To hear stories of young angst, the nerves of going on the ride with someone you had a crush on, the scariness of having your first kiss, and even missed opportunities, lost loves.
Oh my god, this is gonna make me cry. That's so adorable. Going on a ride with your crush, knowing that you guys are gonna kiss in the oh, that's so cute.
One rider who grew up in a small town, the dark tunnels of the attraction were the first place he felt safe kissing his boyfriend.
Yowie! Yes, we got Yowie. Let's go!
For a married couple, a trip on the Old Mill made them laugh and feel like they were in high school again. When the messages weren't overtly erotic, they were actually beautiful, and a good reminder of why I love talking about these parks. They are memorable and exciting places where it's as much about riding the attractions as it is who you are riding with.
That feel when you committed your first Yowie in a Garfield dark ride is such a beautiful sentence.
And sometimes the most memorable experience one can have is getting a kiss while riding a boat through a dark tunnel.
Aww.
And sometimes it's getting a kiss while riding a boat in front of a neon Garfield.
It's true.
Down by the old mill stream where I first met you.
Aww.
With your eyes of blue.
That was so beautiful. What a beautiful story.
It was there I knew that you loved me true. You were 16, my village queen.
My village queen? What is this song? Yippee! Yeah. That was amazing. What?
Look, I can't think of another way to say this. A lot of you were gay in the Garfield dark ride.
Chris Chan is
oh my god! What the heck? A lot of you were gay. Holy crap! That was such a good freaking video. I love that. Thank you so much for watching this awesome Garfield Dark Ride video. I'm so glad it ended in my favorite way. Yowie! Let's go! I hope that you guys have a good day. If you want to leave a comment down below suggesting what you would like me to watch next. I made a playlist to the right for a bunch of Defunctland videos, and you can subscribe and turn on notifications if you like. Anyway, that is it. Goodbye. I'll see you next time.